What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we continue our yearly tradition. We got Dino back on the show. Great to be able to talk with you, man. Thanks for being here.
I'm definitely happy to be here. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and it's been quite a few years that we've known each other.
Yep, I know. It's since 2017, almost 5 years now. It's really awesome and crazy how fast time flies. You were my second interview I've ever done in my life.
Wow, wow. Who was your first?
My first interview ever. It was Mark Holcomb of Periphery with Dusty of Between the Buried and Me. It was like a PRS guitar
Nice,
clinic. So,
nice.
yep. But it's great to be able to have you here, man. So the last time I spoke to you, Aggression Continuum wasn't even out yet, but now it's out, and this album, again, I think it reminded me why I loved Fear Factory. It reminded me of everything I loved about Demanufacture, Obsolete, Soul, etc. But now we got Recoded coming out. You've done this before with Remanufacture, for example. As when you kind of like redo these songs, do you think that almost brings a new layer of meaning or adds to the sort of concept that you've been expressing in the original album?
Yeah, well, when we first started doing it was back in 1992 with Fear's the Mind Killer. And that was, just a way of expressing other elements of music that we like. It's like an extension of the album. And so when we were, going into doing Recoded, I really wanted I'm not sure if you heard it or not. Have you heard the record yet?
I have.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, Disruptor remix is probably the closest thing to the actual song, but everything else has pretty much been manipulated and totally been reconstructed into something completely different. And but at the same time, Fear Factory's music kind of like works really well with these remixes and this kind of electronic industrial DJ type stuff. And it's always been something that we've always been into. Like even going way back the first time we went to Europe, we actually saw, all the early rave stuff that was happening in Europe and back in the early 90s. And just seeing that was like, wow, I think that we need to, kind of embrace this and try something different. And, back in 1992, I was able to convince the record company to let us do that. And so once we did that, it was like, wow, this really opened our eyes to other elements of Fear Factory that we didn't think that necessarily was something that was going to work, but it worked really well. It was experiment, and then fast forward to today, doing these remixes, is definitely, you know, something really cool that we could add that wasn't necessarily put on the regular album. You know what I mean? And another thing too is like when we did a remanufacture in '97, that really opened the doors for video game music because a lot of video game companies really like these remixes and it fit really well with exactly what they wanted to portray on their video games. And it kind of opened the door for a genre in the video game industry that wasn't there before necessarily. You have other guys that were actually creating this kind of music just for the video games after our stuff came out. So it kind of opened the door for video game music for that, and so that really worked out. So over the years, it's been really cool doing this stuff, and I just thought, we haven't done this in a long time, in over 25 years. So I figured, let's try it now. We have all this downtime.
Yeah.
Let's just try it.
Being that this year does mark 10 years of the Industrialist too, did you ever thought about like going back to do that with the Industrialist or even Mechanize if it doesn't already exist?
Necessarily no, but we did do some remixes for bonus tracks. You know what I mean? But nothing like a full length album of remixes. So we've done songs here and there, but nothing really, committed to a full album like we did on this one.
Yeah, I would love to just because again, I think the religion is flawed because man is flawed is like the best outro on a Fear Factory album, and I was just wondering, for old time's sakes, what was the sort of mindset with the Industrialists? Because it almost seemed like Mechanize was almost like the new beginning coming back into Fear Factory, and then the Industrialists followed by Genexus to now. It almost seemed like that there was a great like sort of concept behind it. What was the sort of mindset of the Industrialists, and how has it evolved since then?
Well, when I came back into the band back in 2009, and we did the Mechanize, I definitely wanted to revitalize the band again because, the band had kind of disappeared for a few years there. From about 2006 to 2009, they kind of didn't exist for those 3 years. So I wanted to bring back, more an aggressive industrial style of mechanized. And when we went into the Industrialist, we kind of wanted to continue that style, to make it as aggressive. But the Industrialist is probably, it describes of more of what it is. It's a very more industrial record. At the time we didn't have a drummer. The drummer that we did had went over to Testament, so we didn't have a drummer. So we decided, why don't we use a drum program, which where a band like Fear Factory would fit perfect, and it sounded amazing. But unfortunately, during when the record came out, a lot of people weren't really too keen um, on the electronic drums. So actually, you mentioned like if I would do anything different to the Industrialist, and yeah, we did actually go back and had Mike Heller play live drums on the album. That's going to be coming out next year. But but the Industrialist, the mindset was probably just to make it more industrial compared to some of the previous albums.
Have you ever thought, this may sound like a stupid idea, but just thought of it, like, have you ever thought, because I've always thought that Fear Factory with its concepts could also really work well in the realm of epic elements too, and I think that door was open actually with Divine Heresy as well. But have you thought about maybe like making classical renditions? I thought that maybe you could like maybe do like classical renditions of it, or maybe bring some more epic elements into it. I think with
Like,
Aggression Continuum you could really have that as well.
well, yeah, we added a lot of orchestral stuff in the song Recode.
Yeah.
I had a lot of cool stuff. That was Igor Koreshkov from Yes that did that song with all the orchestral stuff on it. Yeah, he's really amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see our stuff being more into the classical realm of all the orchestral stuff, and with pianos and violins and cellos and things like that, and horns and big drums. I could see that happening for sure.
I could definitely see a beautiful rendition of Expiration Date at Carnegie Hall. That needs to happen one day. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do something like that Metallica did,
Yeah.
where they play with the orchestral and all that stuff. And um, sure, I mean, I could totally see it happening. I mean, I really enjoyed doing a lot of that stuff way back, going back to Resurrection, where we had the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra come in and play all the orchestral elements in that song, and it worked really well. And that was the first time that we ever did anything like that. And yeah, so we carried that forward into Aggression Continuum with Recode.
With the concepts that are demonstrated with every Fear Factory album, do you feel like maybe, because I remember one time when we were talking, like I feel like a lot of Fear Factory's concepts and lyrical themes aged very well. I think they predicted a lot of being run by AI now. Do you think that these concepts could evolve over time as you evolve, or do you prefer if every album that you make is a snapshot of who you are at that particular time in a way?
Definitely, who we are at that time. It's definitely a snapshot. But we also mentioned a lot of things that, especially obsolete. That's probably the most one that is really was perfect for its time. Because things were changing back in the 90s. In the late 90s, things were changing. We were going into Y2K, and just a lot of things had progressed and become obsolete. You know what I mean? So that record, I could say, is a great snapshot of that time. Um, but yeah, each record holds its own. I mean, the concepts go further and further and further. It's like I'm trying to figure out what this next record's going to be about. You know what I mean? It's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know why, but I've always said that. So this is not my words. This is somebody else's words. But they thought that Fear Factory is Elon Musk's version of a metal band.
That'd be amazing. That would be amazing to see. If he ever came out, because I know he does a lot of speaking engagements. That would be great if he came out and can hear Fear Factory in the background. That'd be cool.
If he could
But
just do, he could do the intro to Fuel Injected Suicide Machine and the roar of an engine. He lost everything. All right, here's Fear Factory.
that
So,
that was definitely an ode to the Mad Max series.
yeah, definitely. I've noticed too, like with Aggression Continuum, there was a lot of stuff too, like that I've never heard before. For instance, the guitar solo in Monolith, I thought was really unique for a Fear Factory album. I never would have expected that. And then a song like Purity, I've always said was like Replica's long lost sister song, in a way. But
Yeah, I mean, when I went in to write that song, it was like I wanted to do a replica vibe on that song, and I definitely achieved that.
yep. So that it's in both our song number 4, Replica on Demanufacture and 4 on this. So it makes perfect sense. Do you ever go with songwriting a preconceived vision in a way, or was this like a very roll of the dice sort of like improvised element in a way?
Are you talking about Aggression Continuum?
Yeah, or for any album you've done for that matter.
Oh, for any album, I really like to write. I mean, I have a lot of like before I go on to do a record, I need to get into the mind frame of Fear Factory because I'm usually working on other projects, and sometimes those other projects, whatever project I'm working on, I like to focus on that project, right? Whether it be Assassino or Divine Heresy or the early Brujeria stuff, I really like to focus on that stuff. Sometimes when you combine working two bands, it kind of gets a little, one can start bleeding into the other. You know what I mean? So right now, working on this new Fear Factory record, because we officially went into pre-production for the record, and we are currently shopping record deals at the moment too.
Oh hell yeah!
Because yeah, so we have a lot of stuff going on, but yeah, going into like writing any record or especially this one's gonna that I'm working on now. I really like to focus on this record and just really hone in on what we're trying to create here. But Fear Factory, we've done so much stuff. I'm really trying to step out of the box slightly to create something a little bit differently than what I've done in the past with Fear Factory. You know what I mean? You try to do that with every record, honestly, but in this one in more particular, because we've had 30 coming up in a few days is going to be our 32nd anniversary of Fear Factory. Yeah, we started in 1990, so October 31st, 1990 to be exact. So we have a long span of music. You know what I mean? We have 10 albums. Quite a few remixes and hundreds of other projects that we've worked on. So it's just trying to create something different, just to add new elements into Fear Factory. And that's something that you really got to focus on. You really got to work on. So the mindset for this record is just to try to create something slightly different. But right now, what I've noticed is that it's got more of a mechanized Genexus vibe to it.
Which is awesome, and I can't wait to hear that. And I've also wanted to like talk on like a technical level with collaborating with musicians. First off, is it better if everybody in the band is in the same frame of mind and in the same headspace, or being that we are all individuals, could maybe people having different ideas or feeling different ways maybe actually help enhance the song in a way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would like for everybody to be on the same page. Whoever's working on the record with us, I would for sure like them to be on the same page. Before we go on to do a record, we obviously do a lot of communicating as far as where we're going to go, a lot of planning, what the concept's going to be about, whether it's lyrically, whether it's titles, conceptual wise. Because a lot of times when you come up with those elements like song titles, album titles, concept for the record, that can actually help shape what you're going to help shape the music. You know what I mean? Like if you have a song like The Industrialist or an album called The Industrialist, you want to get into more of an industrial vibe. You know what I mean? Mechanized, you want to get something into, it's going to be more mechanical, things like that. So, having a title whether it's songs or album title, it gives you a vision of what you could do to create the music for it, for that vision. And so that's something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
I have a few working titles for the new record, but of course it's too early to say that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for me, it's for me it really helps. Like I said, because you can visualize what it's going to sound like, and then you create musically what you think it's going to look like and sound like.
Of course. And we talked about this last year too. I remember asking if your personal experiences also ever influence a Fear Factory album. But I'd imagine too, because even with Assassino or Brujeria, it almost seems like that there is like a lot of external sources of inspiration that you're bringing into it. Do you just want to use music as a pure escapism in a way, or has music ever been a cathartic means of confronting your own personal demons? If that's not too much of a personal
Yeah,
question.
definitely been that kind of feelings when it comes to certain songs, like for instance Scapegoat, that's back on the first record, Soul of a New Machine. um that song Scapegoat was pretty much about me getting uh arrested for something I didn't do, wrongly accused of something I didn't do, and having to go to the judicial system for that. It was kind of an emotional song for me. You know what I mean? And lyrically, it's pretty much about the same thing. So that song definitely sometimes can get emotional when I play it live. So yeah. Sometimes it's personal themes, but ever since Demanufacture and Resurrection, we pretty much stuck to. Um, for me, we've stuck to non-personal concepts. You know what I mean? Of course, we're aware of our surroundings, that we're talking about, what's going on today or what could be going on in the future, definitely. But you know, probably one of the song would probably have to be "Final Exit." Um, "Final Exit" is about people who, it's about assisted suicide, about people who are terminally ill. My mother had multiple sclerosis back in the 70s, and she passed away very young. Um, so that song kind of relates to what she went through. So it is definitely a personal song, but it's generalized. Lyrically, it's generalized about you know those people going through that type of stuff. But for me, it really hits home because I went through it with my mother. So yeah, there are some stuff like that, but the majority is we stick with concepts, about futuristic concepts about war and machine.
Has and when you do like a very slow and melodic song, like I don't want to call them ballads because I can't that feels so weird, but when you do a song like Final Exit or Expiration Date, and versus some of your most aggressive material, do you feel like you're channeling like a different type of energy?
For sure. I've always been a fan of melodic, type of emotional, type of songs and music and stuff like that. And definitely, sometimes, like when an actor goes out and acts, he has to get into that character, right? So a lot of times when I'm writing music, of course, it comes from a feeling, and a lot of those feelings, you try to embrace those feelings when you're creating art. Whatever you're feeling, whether it's anger, whether it's something intense, or something very dark and meaningful and emotional. You try to channel all those elements when you're writing music. And so, yeah, I feel all that stuff. And a lot of times it comes out in the music. You can hear it.
With the futuristic concepts though, because I feel like we've evolved into such a reactionary society, and we've evolved, and like I feel like emotions are just as artificial as intelligence at this point. Could the Have you ever thought about making a Fear Factory album that addresses the present? Like, has there ever been a time where the elements that you're portraying is, here is where we are right now, we are here, and all the things we've sang about before?
No,
Okay.
we've never really. Well, since I've been in the band, we've never sang about anything that's happening right now, except maybe the beginning of "Soul of a New Machine." That might have been the only thing, because a song like "Lead Master" was actually written about an ex girlfriend of mine. So I mean, those kind of songs. But I believe that on records that I wasn't on, like Archetype, I believe that was kind of more of that time of what they were going through. at that moment.
Yeah, there's a reason why it sounds very different. And but and when you are like channeling this energy too, when you address the darkness within yourself, obviously it's a cathartic element, but does that also maybe make the songwriting a little bit deteriorating in a way? Because I've always said that sometimes when darkness is your subject matter, artists could sometimes become victims of their own products in a way.
Yeah, obviously darkness is a lot of elements in Fear Factor's music because we're speaking about what the darkness of what the future is. You know what I mean? What it could become. And yeah, sure, times sometimes it comes across negative, but a lot of our records is about questions. We're questioning the future. We're questioning where we are as society and where we're heading to, and that's not always pretty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think too it's like open to interpretation in a way. I feel like a Fear Factory's music is also like could almost serve as an external metaphor. Like, are we the machines that you sing about, or are is society a machine that we're singing about? You know what I mean?
All the above. Society, our government, religion is all those are machines, and obviously technology. You know what I mean? Technology plays a really big part in Fear Factory.
Of course. And the
Obviously, yeah.
yep. And the final question I wanted to ask you is when you're playing all these songs live, you're bringing in songs from all along the Fear Factory catalog. Does that enhance the concept a little bit or change the concept if you opened up with a demanufacture song and then played an aggression continuum song and then went to obsolete or something like that? Does that bring a new meaning and a live presence?
Not necessarily. No, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but to me, it all fits into the concept of what the band's about. You know what I mean? Because still, Fear Factory is Fear Factory, and every record is under that umbrella. So basically, it's just a different chapter of that book or that series or whatever it is. But it all fits. Generally, it all fits really well together.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is because with every Fear Factory album, like I can't listen to Obsolete without starting off with Shock. I can't listen to Demanufacture without starting off with Demanufacture, etc., etc. I feel like your albums are like a chronological element in a way. But when I see you guys live and you're bringing in all these different sides, it almost gives like a different side of Fear Factory in a way. That I thought.
Yeah, well, a lot of times when we play live, we usually try to start. Each like sometimes when we create the set list, we put a block of each era. So if we're going to start with Shock, then next song is going to be Edge Crusher because those two are they fit so well together. On a record, it's going to fit well live. So we usually play that block, and maybe we'll throw Resurrection further down in the set list, kind of like how it is on the record.
Yeah.
So if we're going to play Demanufacture, we're going to play South by Resistor, Zero Signal, and of course Replica. Those songs were perfect at that time. If we're going to play Martyr from Soul of a New Machine, then we're going to play Scapegoat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certain songs fit well together as a block.
Yep.
And that's kind of like what we try to do sometimes. But sometimes you got to play a shorter set list. So it's different songs from different records all mixed up.
Yeah.
But usually we like to try to do blocks of those records.
My favorite story ever that I've heard is what you just recently said on Doc Coyle's podcast on why they had to pull the Gary Newman cover from radio because people thought they were getting kind of like trolled in a way. I think that's one of my favorite stories ever. By the way, I just needed to bring that up beforehand. Like,
yeah, I mean the song was on radio for a good 6 months before their listeners actually were buying the album and then putting it on, and then Shock came on. Like, Shock, like, what the fuck is this? We thought it was going to be more mellow or like the Gary Newman song, and so people actually started calling in radio stations and complaining that it was false advertisement because the song Cars was so completely different from when they bought the record and how heavy the record was. So
I still think that's genius marketing, though. That I think is you got to do another cover on this next album and see if maybe we could get the same effect.
Yeah, that song. I mean, we went to cover the song, and it was actually just it was on the digipack version. The digipack version is basically an extended version of the album with bonus tracks on it. But for some reason, college radio picked up on Cars and started playing the hell out of it. And so Roadrunner decided, hey, let's take this to commercial rock radio. So they did, and it took off on commercial rock radio, and it was great for a while. And then it just really rickrolled everybody. You know what I mean?
That I still think it's the best death metal story of all time. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we felt it, we saw it. You know what I mean? Because when the that song came out and it was on commercial rock radio, we were playing every radio station like summer concert, right? And all of a sudden, they dropped us like a hot potato.
You know what? Hey, I still that's a really interesting means because you mentioned that you interacted with the rave scene because of the sort of because of these remixes that you've done. You've interacted with this sort of radio scene, but you've also been with the underground death metal scene. And when it comes to Assassina and Brujeria, you don't get more than an underground scene than that in a way. So it seems like you were able to sort of not only just play with a variety of different bands, but just play in different venues and different scenes.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a really good ride, and which I continue to be on. But it's been a really good ride playing with all those different types of bands, radio bands, commercial rock bands. You name it, we play with them. There was one story that I didn't bring up, but we were playing this festival one time. It was a radio festival, and there was at least good 8 to 10,000 people. So we got invited to the radio festival because of Cars, right? I don't think the program directors or the whoever was putting the festival on was like really hip to Fear Factory. He probably just knew Cars. So here we are, this heavy band, and we were supposed to play before Godsmack. Now Godsmack, yeah, and Godsmack was the headliners, so we were playing right before the headliners, and Godsmack knew who exactly we were, and so they were like, "We're not playing after Fear Factory, no way." You know what I mean? So put Fear Factory last. So we basically had to switch with Godsmack, and we ended up having to play last. And it was amazing because it felt like your own concert because basically everybody's gear was on off stage, so it's all your gear, all your backdrops, and here there are like 8 to 10,000 people that are forced to watch you.
That's
And
amazing.
so yeah,
Like that's a really cool effect when bands don't want to go on after you. That means they're intimidated by you, or not intimidated. I would never use that term, but like it means that you're like the heavier band on the bill, and that means you're just able to destroy shit. They're like save some audience for the rest of us.
yeah, that was back in 1998, so the band was definitely on fire. Everybody, Bert's vocals were on peak. Everything was just amazing at that time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really fun.
I if I could go back to any time period, it would be like that '90s era of metal. I was in kindergarten when Obsolete came out, so I didn't get
Oh,
to.
really?
Yep, I
Wow.
was born in '93, so
Wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
I didn't get to experience that. My first Fear Factory concert was in the Genexus record cycle, which is odd to say, but better
Yeah.
late than never. So before we go, I want to thank you for always for coming back on the show. It's always great to talk with you. Is there just anything else with Recoded that you would like to plug, and when can we be expecting to see Fear Factory out on the road? I'm dying to hear some of these new songs live.
Yeah. Well, we'll be on tour actually starting late February. We'll be on tour with Static X, going all through the United States. We got 42 shows in 52 days. So yeah, we have a long touring schedule ahead of us. Um, but I will be, we're working on a new record now, pre-production. So, be looking out for that, something new, later on, or actually, I would say probably mid next year. Um, and we're going to be touring. We're going to be touring Aggression Continuum starting in February, like I said, and I can't wait to play those songs live. And then, yeah, pick up the remix record, Recoded, which comes out tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Dino of Fear Factory Recoded. Pick it up when you get a chance. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.